Dude, what happened to your face? Did you get in a fight with a blender? The young man's cruel laughter echoes through the busy coffee shop as 51-year-old Captain Rebecca Hayes stands in line, her facial scars visible under the harsh fluorescent lights. Around her, other customers shift uncomfortably while his friends join in the mockery, their phones already out to capture her reaction. None of them recognize the Purple Heart pin discreetly attached to her purse strap, or understand that those scars came from saving lives under Taliban fire in Afghanistan. What happens next will teach this young man the most important lesson of his life about courage and sacrifice. If you believe in treating our heroes with respect, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments. Have you ever witnessed someone being judged for their appearance before knowing their story? This encounter will change everything. Rebecca Hayes had learned to live with the stares. 3 years after the IED explosion that left the right side of her face scarred from temple to jaw, she'd developed a thick skin about public reactions. Most people were polite enough to look away quickly. Some showed genuine sympathy. A few even recognized what they were looking at and offered quiet thanks. But today was different. She'd stopped at Brew Coffee on her way to a job interview, needing caffeine and a few minutes to calm her nerves. So after 22 years in the army, civilian job interviews still felt foreign and intimidating. The marketing position she was applying for would be her first real career step since her medical retirement. The coffee shop was packed with the usual mix of college students, business people and remote workers. Rebecca joined the line, keeping her head down and reviewing her interview notes on her phone. She'd learned that staying busy made other people less likely to stare. That's when she heard the voice behind her. Dude, what happened to your face? Did you get in a fight with a blender? Rebecca froze. She turned slightly to see a young man, maybe 22 or 23, grinning at his friends like he'd just made the joke of the century. His buddies were already snickering, and one had his phone out, apparently recording. The young man noticed her looking and decided to play to his audience. Seriously though, that's some serious damage. You should probably warn people before they have to look at that. The coffee shop fell silent. Conversations stopped. Even the baristas paused their work to see what was happening. Rebecca felt every eye in the place on her, watching to see how the scarred woman would react to being publicly humiliated. Her first instinct was to leave. Walk out, skip the coffee, maybe even skip the job interview. Go home where she didn't have to be entertainment for cruel strangers. But something stopped her. Maybe it was her military training, or maybe she was just tired of running away from ignorant people. She turned around fully to face him. The young man's name was Tyler, though Rebecca didn't know that yet. What she saw was a kid who'd probably never faced real hardship, wearing expensive clothes and carrying the latest iPhone, surrounded by friends who thought cruelty was comedy. You want to know what happened to my face? Rebecca asked quietly, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd given orders in combat zones. Tyler's grin widened. He thought he was winning. Oh, this is going to be good. Let me guess, bar fight? Angry boyfriend? Or maybe you were just born that way. His friends laughed harder. Someone in the back called out, "This is going on TikTok for sure." Rebecca felt the familiar tightness in her chest that came with flashbacks, but she pushed it down. She'd faced Taliban fighters and roadside bombs. She could handle an ignorant kid in a coffee shop. I was in Afghanistan, she said simply, leading a medical evacuation when our convoy hit an IED. Tyler's smile faltered slightly, but he wasn't ready to back down. Oh great, another soldier story. What? You want me to thank you for your service now? The temperature in the coffee shop seemed to drop 10 degrees. Even Tyler's friends looked uncomfortable now. An older man at a nearby table stood up, his face flushed with anger, but Rebecca held up a hand to stop him. No, she said to Tyler. I don't want your thanks, but since you asked what happened to my face, I'll tell you. The shop was completely quiet now, except for the hum of espresso machines. Rebecca's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath it. March 15th, 2021. We were evacuating wounded Afghan civilians from a village outside Kandahar. My unit had set up a temporary aid station when we got word that Taliban fighters were moving in. We had maybe 20 minutes to get everyone out. Tyler was no longer smiling, but he was trapped now by his own cruelty and his friends' expectations. Rebecca continued. We loaded the most critical patients first, children mostly. Kids who'd been hurt by a mortar attack the day before. I was carrying a 6-year-old girl to the helicopter when the IED went off. She paused, and in that silence, everyone in the coffee shop could hear the weight of what she wasn't saying. The blast threw me about 15 feet. Shrapnel from the device hit the right side of my face, my shoulder, and my leg. I was bleeding, half blind, and my hearing was gone. But that little girl was still in my arms, and she was alive. Tyler's face had gone pale. His friends were no longer recording. The coffee shop felt like a church. So I got up, Rebecca said. With blood pouring down my face and metal fragments buried in my cheek, I carried that child to the helicopter. Then I went back for the others. Made 4 more trips while under enemy fire, evacuating wounded civilians and my own injured soldiers. She looked directly at Tyler. Those scars you're laughing at, I got them saving lives. That damaged face you think is so funny. It's the face that 7 people see in their dreams as the person who carried them to safety. Tyler tried to speak, but no words came out. Rebecca wasn't finished. After the evacuation, I spent 6 months in military hospitals. 17 surgeries to put my face back together. The doctors did an amazing job, but some scars don't disappear. Some damage is permanent. She gestured to her face. This is what courage looks like after it's been tested. These scars are proof that I chose to run toward danger instead of away from it. That I put other people's lives before my own safety. The coffee shop was so quiet that the sound of Tyler's phone hitting the floor seemed loud as thunder. He dropped it without realizing, his hands shaking. Rebecca took a step closer to him, and Tyler instinctively backed up. So when you ask what happened to my face, she said, her voice still controlled, but with an edge that came from years of command authority. The answer is that I earned every one of these scars. The question is, what have you ever done with your unmarked, undamaged face except use it to hurt strangers? Tyler's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. His friends had melted away, suddenly very interested in their phones or their coffee orders. He was alone with his cruelty, exposed in front of an entire room of people who now saw him exactly for what he was. "Ma'am," he finally whispered, his voice cracking. I didn't know." Rebecca's expression softened slightly, but not much. "Of course you didn't know. That's the point. You saw someone who looked different and decided that gave you the right to hurt them for your entertainment. You never bothered to wonder if there might be a story behind what you were seeing." An older woman at a corner table started crying quietly. A businessman near the counter bowed his head in what looked like shame. The barista behind the register whispered, "Thank you for your service," but Rebecca barely heard it. Tyler was crying now, tears streaming down his young, unmarked face. "I'm sorry," he kept saying. "I'm so sorry." "I didn't mean," "But you did mean it," Rebecca interrupted gently. "You meant every word when you thought it would get you laughs. The only thing you're sorry about is that you got caught being cruel to someone who could fight back with words." She picked up his phone from the floor and handed it to him. "Tyler, that's your name, right? I heard your friends using it." He nodded miserably. "Tyler, you have a choice now. You can learn from this and become someone better, or you can go back to making jokes about people's pain as soon as you think it's safe again. But understand this, every time you mock someone's appearance, every time you turn someone's pain into your entertainment, you're choosing to make the world a little bit crueler." She turned to address the entire coffee shop. "All of you," she said, her voice carrying to every corner. "We all have scars. Some are visible, some aren't. Some come from war, some from accidents, some from illness, some from life just being hard. But every person walking around with visible differences has a story, has fought battles you know nothing about." Rebecca looked back at Tyler one last time. "Those scars you mocked, they're not my shame. They're my medals. They're proof that when the worst moment of my life came, I didn't run. I stayed and did my job." She walked to the counter, ordered her coffee, and waited while the barista, a young veteran himself, judging by his Marine Corps tattoo, prepared it with obvious respect and care. As she turned to leave, Tyler stood up. "Ma'am," he called out, his voice still shaky. How do I make this right?" Rebecca paused at the door. "You start by treating people with basic human dignity. You start by thinking before you speak. And maybe you volunteer with veterans organizations or wounded warrior programs, or anywhere that puts you face to face with people who've sacrificed more than you've ever been asked to give. She left the coffee shop that morning carrying more than caffeine. She carried the knowledge that sometimes standing up to cruelty, speaking truth to ignorance, could plant seeds of change in unexpected places. Tyler never posted the video he'd started recording. Instead, he spent the rest of that day researching veteran support organizations. By the following week, he was volunteering at the local VA hospital, reading to patients and learning their stories. Months later, he would run into Rebecca at a veterans fundraiser, where she was the keynote speaker. He approached her nervously, unsure if she'd remember him. She did remember. And when he told her about the work he'd been doing, about the veterans he'd met and the stories he'd heard, she smiled, the first genuine smile he'd ever seen from her. "That's how you make it right," she said. Not with apologies, but with action. Not with words, but with service. Tyler's transformation wasn't instant or perfect, but it was real. And Rebecca's scars, the ones he had mocked so carelessly, had become the catalyst for his journey toward becoming a better human being. Sometimes the most powerful battles are fought not with weapons, but with truth. Sometimes the greatest victories come not from defeating enemies, but from turning them into allies.